In this video, you're going to learn how to add components to a graph. And by components, I mean images or pictures or shapes, because in your assignment, you have to add circles or squares to certain data points, or you might have to add symbols. There's different ways to do it. You might have a different way, and you can go ahead and do that if you have a different and more efficient way of doing it. There's different ways of adding symbols. There's a previous video that I had linked. You can go watch that in the assignment document. Let's go ahead and take a look at this particular method where you can do everything all in essentially one place. So here's your graph. Let's assume it's complete and looks good. This is not what your graph actually looks like. This is just a sample graph. You would have a title. You would have titles on your axes, but this one doesn't. But yours would. So now I'm at the step where I want to add in some of those shapes, like a circle or a square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click on my graph um, to select it. So left click, or if you have some other device, just make sure you're selecting your graph and then do the copy function. So for me, it's Control C, whatever your copy function is, do that on your end. Now I'm going to go to Insert and I'm going to go to Drawing. When I click on Drawing, this box will pop up that says Drawing. It's a Google Drawing extension. So now I'm going to paste the graph that I copied into this drawing box. I can do that by left clicking and then hitting paste. I think you can also do Control V, but just click paste. And then you're going to be given two options, link to spreadsheet or paste unlinked. If you link to the spreadsheet, you can still modify it after you've added the pictures to it. And I'll show you that later. So let's go ahead and click paste. Here's my graph. And I'm going to go ahead and add a shape to it. So if you look above, there's a whole bunch of tools here. And really the best way to learn stuff is just to click around and play around with it and see what works and what doesn't. It's the only way you're going to pick up those computer skills as they relate to science. So here we're going to click on shape. You'll hover over the shape title there, and then that will bring up a box and you can select different shapes. So we'll select our circle or oval or whatever that is there, make your shape like that. When you first make it, there might be a filled in color already, so you can remove that. Otherwise, it's going to cover up the data points, and you don't want to do that. You just want to circle them to highlight them. So you can just make sure you clicked on your shape. You click on the bucket over here that says fill color, and you can just make it transparent. You can also change the outline color if you'd like, but it's not necessary at this point. Then you can make it hover over one of your data points. You can do different shapes. So for example, you can choose to insert a square instead, like this. And you do the same thing, make sure it's transparent. Don't select white, because if you select white, then your shape is filled and it'll cover up your data point with the white color. So make sure you're selecting transparent, and you can put that over a data point as well. In your assignment, you also had to make a line to sort of estimate where the data would go based on periodic trends. And so you can do that as well. Next to shape, there's a line. And so all you have to do is click on the drop down arrow, and there's different options that you can use. You can choose to make just a series of straight lines like this. You can choose to do a scribble. And so a scribble, essentially, you just click, hold down, and move that cursor around and make a scribble that way. So you have different options that you can use to make lines, to connect data points where there might be missing data available. So that there is how you can go ahead to add shapes or scribbles or lines to your graph once it's made. And when you're finished, all you have to do is hit save and close, and you'll get a copy of your, you'll get a copy of your graph over here. Let's just drag it here with all the shapes that you added onto it. You won't be able to move the shapes when you're in this view mode. What you'll have to do is, if you want to go back and move the shapes around, you can just click on the three dots here, click on edit, and then it'll bring you back to this page over here. Now, let's say you want to continue modifying your graph. What you could do is, since we copied and linked it, there's a little paperclip over here. You can click on that, and you can go to open source. And what that will do is it'll open another window with the original graph you were working with before, and then you can modify it. And that modification should update on the other end. Let's just see if that actually works out. So this is our graph over here, but let's go ahead and modify this graph here. So you want to modify the original one. You might not even have to do open source. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check, but let's just make a change to it just to see that it actually is reflected in our graph over here. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll just something obvious. Let's do and then let's try. I removed the axis line there, so I just wanted to do something obvious so you could notice it, and you'll notice it happened in our graph there too. So as soon as I add it back in, then I should be able to see it again. So let's go ahead and remove that again. Let's go to the axis there. Let's remove the axis. Now, if I want to update in the picture, what I do is I go back to my previous window and notice now there's a button that says update. And when I do that update, then the change I made will be reflected in the image as well. It might shift some of your shapes over just depending on what your update was, but then all you have to do is move your shapes around. So once again, I can hit save and close, and all those modifications I made will be now seen or reflected on this graph over here.